Travel restrictions are increasing around the world and in India as well because of the Omicron. In fact, a new set of instructions in Maharashtra ensure that anyone coming in from an at-risk location has to undergo 7 days of institutional quarantine. Those who are traveling within the country and coming into the state have to not just present their vaccine certificates but also a negative RT PCR test taken 72 hours before boarding. Now, there is a global debate going on, and especially one within the country, talking about whether these restrictions are required or is it an overkill. There is one school of thought that thinks that we're really going too far. Remember, countries around the world have banned travelers coming in from at-risk countries, which includes South Africa and other nations, while some have really put in quite stringent restrictions which will ensure that people are waiting at the airport perhaps for up to 6 hours while they get their fresh RT PCR test results. Now, the concerns are that a large group of people waiting in an enclosed environment like the airport will just lead to more and more infections and is not necessarily a great idea. From the point of view of the travel and tourism industry, while they were just beginning to get their heads up, this is a busy season globally for travel. It's the Christmas New Year season. People take breaks, they take holidays, and they are already beginning to see a hit with cancellations coming in and the number of bookings dwindling for international travel. They argue that we should have found a simpler solution in all of these 18 months and more that we've been living with the COVID-19, because this is not going to be the last variant, and we need to find a better way to deal with it rather than clamping down on travelers. For travelers, well, it doesn't get any better. You will have to wait for hours at airports, and you will possibly have to pay from your own pocket at very high rates for RT PCR tests, even if you are vaccinated and even if you've taken a test before you've boarded the flight. So that is one part of the story. Now let's look at the other side of the story, why medical experts and policymakers are pushing in for stringent quarantine or for stringent travel restrictions. Well, mainly because this is an airborne disease. The virus is airborne. So even if you board a flight vaccinated, and even if you board a flight with a negative RT PCR test, can you really be sure that you haven't caught the infection while you're on the flight? Symptoms could take a few days to show, and more we are now learning that the Omicron is infecting people who have had 2 vaccines as well. So vaccine breakthrough is very much there. That really is the primary concern, that what if someone develops symptoms or gets tested positive, that it starts showing a few days after they land? Will it be safe if that person is out and about in the populace and can infect others, considering this is an airborne disease, which is why some are resorting to institutional quarantine. Now, the question about institutional quarantine becomes a painful one because it's usually at the cost of the traveler. Home quarantine is also allowed in some cases, and you have to check what airport you're going to and what the rules of that particular state and country are. But that also means if you're visiting a place, say for 4 days or 5 days, you will have to spend even more time and money being quarantined there. What does this do for business travel? Well, it really cuts out business travel out of the window to a large extent. People will possibly go back to the Zoom calls. Leisure travel also will see a lot of lack of interest because no one will want to pay money, and then they don't know what's going to happen once they land, what the rules are and how they're changing overnight. So for travelers, it's a bad time. For the hospitality service sector, travel and tourism industry, it's definitely a bad time. But there are many who believe that it's better to be safe than sorry, because we don't want a variant that spreads very quickly in the country without really knowing for sure whether our vaccines will hold up to it. So what's your point of view? Do you think that we should have strict restrictions, or should we not have strict restrictions? Tell us what you think.